My name is Michael Kidder. I am an account executive with JourneyTEAM and am home based today, like many of us. So on the phone, I have George Sagan. He is our solution architect, and Cecily Nelson, who is a senior ERP consultant. They'll be doing the majority of the presentation. From the standpoint of JourneyTEAM, I'll let George advance the next slide. We are a full stack Microsoft partner, which means we deal not just with Microsoft's ERP systems, but the variety of their business softwares. As a consulting company, we're about 90 folks. We're headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, and have offices in all the major time zones and do business all across the country. And again, with a variety of the technologies that you kind of see on the screen there. So it's an opportunity for us to today talk about ERP and kind of some migration paths and some things with their newest product, Business Central. As a consulting company, he kind of passed through it, but we've been in business for over 26 years and a majority of that time in the ERP space. We were actually last year a Microsoft US Partner of the Year for Business Central specifically, but within their ERP practice. So certainly a variety of their ERP systems are kind of near and dear to our heart. And as we've partnered with Microsoft through the years, kind of working through the details of product launches and enhancements, it's been exciting for us to kind of utilize that expertise and pass it on to our customers. So again, my name is Michael. If there's anything you need, be happy to take any emails or questions. You can put those down there. And with that, I will turn it over to George and Cecily.
All right, thanks, Michael. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. We've had a whole spectrum of our customers who, with the recent coronavirus, have either experienced like a boom in their business as they're trying to get their employees mobile, keep everybody working from the road and from their homes, but also many of them are in different industries that actually have grown more critical, and all the way to some that are just struggling to hang on and keep the doors open. And we had originally planned this webinar before this whole thing came up, and it was mostly just kind of focused on migration paths. We've shifted the focus a little bit to just help you understand how these optional paths that we've laid out for you can help your businesses make it through this rough patch. We've been working on Microsoft Teams for the last few years, and our business really hasn't missed a heartbeat. We just switched over to working from our homes, and everything went really smoothly. But it's concerned us as we talk to our customers, many of whom have had to tap the brakes just to keep things going. So welcome today. We hope that we provide you with some information that's useful to you for making some good decisions. The audience today, hopefully you're here because you are on Microsoft Dynamics GP, and maybe you're on an old version and you're wondering, well, how can I get caught up? Or perhaps you are thinking maybe you'd like to migrate to Dynamics Business Central. You may hear it referred to as BC in this presentation. And what are your migration options to get there, either from GP or even on basically any other ERP system out there. So I did want to mention before we get started here, this session will be recorded. You'll all receive an email probably tomorrow with a link to download that, and it'll be out on YouTube, so you can send that on to your friends. All right. So, like I said, we'll be talking about today the value of upgrading to the latest release of Dynamics GP. And there's a lot of you out there who you've been on it for a long time. Maybe you're not ready to make the move to Business Central. Maybe it's just not the right time for that. But certainly there's some great options to get you upgraded and on a current version. Some of you may be even a little hopeless that you've gone on such an old version of GP. How can you ever get caught up? And we've got some great news for you, a great story to share on how we can get you there. But also, once you're upgraded, that puts you in a good position actually to make a migration to Business Central. And we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about those migration options that you have if you do decide that you want to do this. So let's just real quickly talk to those who are on GP who maybe you just need to make it through the next few months. Maybe it's just a good fit for you for the long term. What are your options for upgrading to the latest of GP? We're not going to go into too much detail on these. I do have some slides on them. You can read probably as fast as I can read them out loud. But one thing I did want to focus in on is that we do have improved remote access via a web client deployment. If for those of you who are not on one of the more recent versions that has that web client, you can we can make your deployment of GP internet facing, secure it for you, and give your people an option to work from home on that. And then of course, if you do decide to upgrade to the current version, not only do you get to take advantage of the newest features, make better use of tech support and so forth, but it does position you for easier migration to Business Central. So as far as what's new in Dynamics GP, you can go out and read it for yourself. I did provide a link here, and you'll be able to get that when you download your recording. There's a site that you can basically start on the version that you're on and then read the net change docs pretty easily from this site that I provided here that'll tell you what new features are available. Feel free to reach out to us here at JourneyTEAM. If you know who your sales rep is, you can ping them or ping anybody that you know here, and we'd be happy to actually spend some time with you and go through what enhancements are out there and how you can benefit from upgrading. I mentioned earlier the GP remote user web client. Your users will not miss a beat if they do the upgrade and start using the web client. It looks just like the desktop client. It interacts with your Microsoft Office desktop applications like Excel especially. It'll use your local print drivers, and nicely it has very light bandwidth requirements. So you can run this from home even on kind of a crummy slow internet, and it performs pretty well. So from a business continuity standpoint, if you're on GP and you're really not ready to migrate to Business Central, upgrading to a more current version that has a web client is certainly a good option for you. One of the benefits also of upgrading, of course, is tech support. If you are on an older version and you call in for tech support, the first question they're going to ask you is, well, what version are you on? And if you're not current, they're going to ask you to get upgraded and before they'll start helping you with your problem. And so that could extend the time that it takes to get it resolved. Lots of benefits of being on the latest OS and SQL Server versions. If you are using an older version of GP, and your IT department wants to upgrade to more recent versions of the server or SQL Server to get many of the security and scalability and high availability features, connectivity features, you may find that you cannot do that upgrade because it's not compatible with an older version of GP. So definitely some technology drivers for doing that upgrade. Now, we'd really like you to consider looking at Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. This out of the box was designed to be a work from anywhere on any device type of an ERP environment. You get all the benefits of a modern data center system, hosted system. The Microsoft data center has all the things that your internal IT department dreams that they could ever have in terms of scalability, high availability, performance, strong encryption, all of those features that protect your data, but smaller companies just can't afford, and they make it easily accessible to you. And then of course the total cost of ownership as you look at owning this over the years is, we think it's a very compelling story. So just talking about the work from anywhere concept, you're probably seeing more and more, all of your customers are in the cloud. They're probably trying to shift the way that they communicate with you over to the cloud. And all your competitors are moving to the cloud also. So the question is, are you competitive? Are you staying up to date? Business Central is fully hosted in the cloud, and all of the hooks and the tools that are enable it to interact with all of the web hosted services that are out there are native to Business Central. Additionally, you can use your phone, your tablet to access it, and you get a lot of good mobility type features. I can tell you I've had instances where I was driving into work and got a call, somebody needed some help. I just pulled over in the gas station, tethered to my cell phone, fired up Business Central. I was able to get onto their system and work no problem. So what are some of the benefits of using a system that's hosted in a data center? And bear in mind, Business Central out of the box is hosted in a data center, and you'll get all of these benefits. Some of these benefits would be available to you if you were to upgrade GP and then simply have it hosted on an Azure instance in the cloud. You would get some of these benefits, but the full spectrum of these benefits is available on Business Central. And we'll talk about paths to get you to Business Central from GP. We did an informal survey amongst our internal consultants. About 2 years ago, one of our good customers got hit by ransomware, and they called us and said, hey, sorry, we got to put the pause on our whole project. We're going to be redeploying our whole ERP system here, but we've got to get our data back before we do that. And so they paid several tens of thousands of dollars to some crooks in Russia, some thugs, to get their own data back and then redeployed in a more secure Azure hosted environment. But we asked our team, hey, have any of you had anybody in your the clients that you're servicing who you're aware this has happened to? And I was shocked because just in the last year before that, we'd had 7 of our clients who had all of their data, their GP data, their GP instance, and their entire company's, all their files were locally hosted on their own servers by their own internal IT teams, and they got hit with ransomware. And I was really surprised at the number of them. But being hosted in Business Central in the Microsoft 365 cloud, you would be completely protected from ransomware for all of your ERP and CRM data. Another advantage, I think, of the Microsoft Business Central is the App Store for AppSource. Many of you have cell phones, and you know what it's like to be able to just go into the App Store or the Play Store on your phone if it's an Android, and download apps for your system. And as a matter of fact, I'm just going to pull up the real App Store here. Take a risk that my internet's running nicely here. This is Business Central. You can see our nice web interface there. I'm just going to go into the extension store here real quick. Out of the box, Business Central is a fully functional ERP system that should be able to meet 90 to 95% of your needs right out of the box. But there's extensions for solving a lot of those little vertical market needs that you have. And there are hundreds and hundreds of applications in this store for barcoding systems, adding retail features, printing, marketing tools, all sorts of things. So that's a neat feature, and that App Store keeps growing. And that really opens you up to all the talent out there. There's a huge ecosystem of developers making tools for Business Central, solving companies' problems, and then putting those applications in the App Store for you to be able to have access to those too. And that grows rapidly all the time. Now, if you're having any questions, don't fret. I think Dave mentioned just enter them into the chat window. Dave's keeping track of those, and we'll be glad to discuss those at the end here if I'm moving too fast for you.
Hey, George, one thing on those, the AppSource, one thing to note is that they have to go through a rigorous process to actually become an app for the Business Central. And so one of the things that's fantastic about that is that those apps have been tested and thoroughly gone through the ringers before they can actually become an app for Business Central.
You know, thank you. That's a great point. And in addition to that, I'd say that they're all built out using the latest tool set for developing extensions in Business Central. So they should, it helps them to upgrade cleanly. And you also do get, with your Business Central subscription, you'll get licensed for 3 production environments and 3 sandbox environments. So you should have a lot of room to create copies of your company and actually load these into test environments that you copy from your production environment and test them out and play with them too. And most of them come with free trial periods, so you can play with them before you decide to buy. So you caught me. I reused a slide from an earlier presentation. Don't ask Richard about special pricing for GP customers. He's not on the call, but do, if you're interested, there is upgrade pricing. If you're on GP now and you are interested in migrating to Business Central, there is a discount available, and express interest in the chat window and we'll take care of you. We keep the licensing for Business Central pretty simple. I'd say it's actually very similar to the GP licensing. We have a flat, what we call an essentials license. That would be the equivalent of your regular GP license. We have a premium license, which I think parallels your extended GP license, which includes the advanced manufacturing and field services modules. And but other than that, pretty much everything is in essentials other than those two major modules. And then we do have a team user license. This is for people who need read-only access and perhaps need to report time sheets in the system or expenses. This would typically be your service users, your factory staff, and your, or if you were doing project accounting, that would be those members. It's very flexible. You get a portal to go in and manage your licenses. There's no minimum user license count. You can add and remove them as needed. There's no contract, no minimum time period. We make it very easy and painless for you to manage your licenses in Business Central. So just continuing down the page, other advantages. I'm sorry, we're on the upgrade options now. We've come up with 4 upgrade paths for taking an earlier version of GP to the current version. So I'm going to get off the topic of migrating from GP to Business Central for a minute and just focus on just upgrading your GP. Now there's, of course, the 2 main things about upgrading to GP were all of those benefits that we covered earlier about being on the current version. But in addition, it does position you, if you want to eventually move to BC or immediately move to it, it puts you in a version that allows you to directly migrate your data from GP into Business Central. So we're not going to go into too much detail on option 1. That's something that you're all familiar with if you've ever upgraded. It's an in-place upgrade. You basically take the server that you have, you look at the next version that you have to upgrade to, you look at the compatible OS and SQL Server version. You have to install those on your server, install the next version of GP, and then run the upgrade utility. This is pretty good for a single hop upgrade and probably the recommended thing to do if you don't really want to buy, if you're not required to buy new hardware, if you're not trying to upgrade your server. However, this can get really tedious and take literally several days if you have several hops to go through to achieve your upgrade, if you've gotten really behind on your upgrades. The next path is similar, but you're basically just getting a new server and you're doing that upgrade. But let's talk a little bit about this next option, the Azure hosted upgrade, and then copy it back to on-prem, or the Azure hosted upgrade and then migrate to Azure. This is kind of a detailed slide, but I wanted to show you that we have created 4 virtual machines, each one of them hosting a different version of Microsoft Server and SQL Server that are compatible with the upgrade path that you can go through if you're coming up from old versions. So the way we work this is, say you're on a version predating version 9, you're on version 8 or 7.5. This green arrow means I can take either of these versions and I can drop them onto our VM number 4, and we'll upgrade that to version 9. Then I export that database, and then I copy it over to VM number 3, and it'll upgrade it all the way from 9 to 2010 R2. Then I take that, I copy it, drop it onto VM number 2. It'll take it all the way up to 2015 R2. And then I take that one and I drop it onto our virtual machine number 1, and it takes it all the way to 2018. So you don't have to tediously go and upgrade your operating system over and over on those, either on a new server or in your in-place server. Just ship us your database. We'll just drop it on these one by one. we could take you all the way from 7 to 5. It's usually, we budget about 2 hours per hop, so we can do virtually any upgrade in one day. So by doing it that way, we're making it very convenient, very painless, very easy for you to get from any old version to the current version. All you need to do is have either, if you're going to stay on-prem, have your new server ready with the right version to support the latest version of GP, or, and what we're recommending now to help folks get mobile is that let us provision an Azure instance for you in the cloud, and then drop that final upgraded GP version into Azure for you. That way you will be able to access it remotely. You'll be able to use the web client. You will be protected from ransomware and from virus attacks. You'll be in a scalable data center where anytime you want to add RAM, disk space, add CPUs, it's all dynamic, it's easily maintainable, and you're now paying for that on a monthly subscription basis rather than having to make a big investment in a server. And it's highly available. Most of those upgrades can be done without having to bring the virtual machine down. But best of all, it does place you in a position now where you're on a version of GP where we have some tools available to migrate you to Business Central from there. So let's talk about that GP migration to Business Central and what your options are there. So we have a tool called Intelligent Edge. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then we also have some data export utilities. And then we also want to talk about the idea of doing a completely fresh start. So starting with Intelligent Edge, what is it? Intelligent Edge is a data migration service that Microsoft provides that allows you to take either your on-prem or your Azure hosted instance of GP and point it to a cloud hosted instance of Business Central and sync it up. Now, what will it sync? It will bring over your, and Cecily, feel free to jump in if I misspeak or miss anything here. It'll bring over your master data. So it will bring your chart of accounts, it'll bring your customers, your vendors, your items, and then it will also bring over your open subledger transactions, your open AR, your open AP, and it'll keep all of that in sync for you. It will also take your segments in your chart of accounts in GP, and it will recast those as what we call dimensions in Business Central. So you keep your core chart of accounts of your natural accounts, your natural account segment, but it busts those other segments out into dimensions that you can use for dimensional accounting, similar to analytical accounting, but easier to use.
I was going to say dimensional.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, demented accounting, that's my style.
Yeah, it's very similar to the analytical accounting, but like George was saying, it's a lot easier to utilize because it's dimension based, and it makes it so your GL accounts don't get out of control, and you just have your core GL account that you have to deal with.
Yep. It does not bring over all your historical subledger data, but it would give you a synced up instance in Business Central, and then we could use that to train you on Business Central, and then you could prep to migrate and go live on Business Central using that Intelligent Edge synced copy. Another thing you could do is just sync up a copy, but maybe do a new deployment of Business Central, a fresh one, and we'll talk about the fresh start in just a minute, but still have an instance of Business Central that has all your old historical data in it, so you can run historical financial reports, and it gives us a way using Power BI to connect to that database and maybe do some consolidation. Now, part of the value too is even if you wanted to stay on GP, you could use Intelligent Edge to sync out to an instance of Business Central, not use Business Central as your operational transactional system, but have access to Power BI, Microsoft Flow, which is our automation tool, Power Apps, which allows you to create very powerful but small footprint, low code, no code little applications that can talk to your ERP system. You can get some of the AI, the artificial intelligence services, so you can forecast your inventory balances, you can forecast cash flows. So there's a lot of value to syncing GP up with Business Central, although ultimately we think the best value is in helping you to get live and migrated over to Business Central. If you are, if there's anybody on the call who's actually on an older version of Business Central, which used to be called Nav or Navision, this service also works for syncing that up to Business Central. So that's the Intelligent Edge migration. So if, say, you're on a really old version of GP, you may choose to use our cloud migration, that big ugly slide described, and get your system upgraded up to a version of GP that's compatible with Intelligent Edge, and then use Intelligent Edge to push you over to Business Central. Alternatively, another path is that we use the GP, the file utilities. So right here, these data export utilities. I think it starts in GP version 2016, I believe. They have built-in, they've added to the GP utilities a section where you can export all of that master data out to files that we can use to import. So it's a little bit similar to Intelligent Edge in that it actually moves the exact same data over. However, think of it as a snapshot. You pick a point in time in GP, you run the data export utility, you get all that data, you import it into BC, and then you kind of fire at BC. It's not going to keep your data continually synced up. It's just a kind of a one-time snapshot of GP and move it over to BC. Now, you could do a hybrid approach where we actually just upgrade you to 2016. We don't take you all the way up to 2018 and then run these utilities and move your data. So it would be using our cloud migration, but just shaving 1 or 2 hops off of that and then running the utilities. Cecily, is there anything I forgot on the data export utilities?
No, it's just that it allows you to have a little bit of time to do your next step, which is the fresh start. It allows you a little bit of capability of massaging that data before we actually import it into Business Central. So a lot of times when you're doing a migration, it's a great time for you to stop and think and say, is everything as I want it to be with my chart of accounts? Is my customer set up the way I want to do? Because you've been using the system for a while, you usually come across things that you say, I wish we would have done this differently. And so that option gives you a chance to take a little bit of a step back and change some things that you may have set up incorrectly at first.
Yeah. Or maybe the things that you set up were actually good at the time, but with dimensional accounting in Business Central, it's really flexible because we put all the core accounts that we know are going to stand the test of time into the chart of accounts. But for that dynamic part of your business, for example, sales territories change, product families change, service categories, sales channels change. And those are usually all those weird accounts that we're sticking in there to try to get some sort of product line P&L or sales territory P&L. We start building out accounts to host those, but those things change. So maybe what you did was really good back when you did it, but it's changed in the interim, and now you've got all of these relics just sitting in your chart of accounts, and it makes it really hard for running historical comparisons. And so there's a lot of cleanup you may want to do. If we were all in the room, I'd ask how many of you, hold up your hands, have a bunch of old customers in your system, old vendors, old part numbers that, you know what, maybe it's time to just clean those out. Or maybe you started down the path of a part numbering system and then now you're kind of backed into a corner and it no longer works for you. Another thing that we see commonly is, over time, controllers, CFOs come and go, and they each have different ways of doing things. And so you end up with kind of a Frankenstein chart of accounts and even your business processes. So set aside everything we just said about migrating data and ask, hey, is it actually time to get a fresh start? Maybe we use the GP export utilities that we discussed here, dump all of that data out, pull it into Excel, go through, really scrub it, clean it, normalize it, remove all the duplicates, standardize capitalization, take people's phone numbers out of email fields, do all that data scrubbing and get a good clean start. It'll help you focus better and be a more profitable business. I think the key to any of these migrations from GP to BC, if you find yourself in that situation is it really helps if the partner that you're working with knows both GP and Business Central. You can save on your migration time. We found that if it's a customer that we really know already, or if they're on GP and we're able to get into their system, we're able to accelerate the migration and implementation process because we see how you have it set up in GP. We can figure out what your pain points are and the things that need to be changed, but then really focus on just getting your system set up and training you on specifically what you need to know, rather than kind of taking a broad brush business process re-engineering approach where we have to train you on everything and then go through and pick and choose the stuff that we thought was cool. Now, actually, I missed a step earlier in my demo, and I'm embarrassed, but I want to go back to it because it's so cool. We were talking about mobile and working, the ability to work mobile in BC, and you've probably not had the experience of using your ERP system on your cell phone, but this is just like one quick example of things that you can do. You may have a purchase order that you've created, and you want somebody to be able to approve that PO, and so when they go to actually release the PO, the system would say, nope, that's on hold. You can't release it because it needs to be approved. Let me just check here. All right, so make sure I'm on the right one here. All right, so here's a PO that we've got in the system, and it turns out that Hank is not authorized to cut purchase orders over $500, so he can send an approval request, and it's actually already been sent, and I got it out here on my cell phone. So backing up just a little bit here. So this is the interface on the mobile device, and you can see it actually looks just like Business Central here, and it is actually using the same code. It's just saying, okay, he's on a mobile device, let's rescale the interface so it looks so that it fits on the screen. And so I have down here my approvals queue. Let me, rather than trying to use my mouse. So right here is my approvals requests to approve. I open that. I just show you I'm doing this on my cell phone here. And then you can select the one that you want to work on, and you can take a look at it if you want to. You could put comments on it, like I could say, you know, why, what was this for? As a matter of fact, I think I can actually use my text recognition here. What was this for? Question mark. There we go. Oh, I've used the number 4. Very smart.
I like it.
Thank you. And then if you want to, you can just go out and approve, reject, or delegate the transaction. I'll go ahead and approve this one. And now that's been released. So I could have been doing that while sipping a pina colada and sitting on the beach. Or I could have done it while sitting at home trying to not catch coronavirus. So,
with your feet up watching TV.
Shh. I was like the only one in the world who hadn't seen The Mandalorian, but I got caught up. So, yeah, you know, other fun things you can do. I mean, obviously, I'm an ERP guy. My definition of fun is probably not the same as normal people, but I remember one time I got my cell phone and I was logged into CRM, and I said, oh, I want my contacts from CRM in my cell phone, and I synced it up. Well, I pulled 1 million contacts into my phone, and I just almost killed it. So this allows you to basically keep your work separate from your cell phone contact list. I've opened up this customer record. I can, from the customer record now, I can click on the phone number, and you see it just pulls up my dialer. Let's not call my own cell phone. That's actually my number. I can also send an email to this, who is that squirrely George at JourneyTEAM? And then it uses the device, the settings that are on your device. Another cool thing I found the other day, just poking around, you can actually scan an invoice. Like here, I can create a document, an incoming document from the camera. I've got here our invoice for our Comcast. Boom. And then it submits that to the OCR service. I can go in and submit that, and then it'll read the document and it'll turn it into an AP invoice for me. So this is the kind of functionality that once you get mobile and you start using it, you start realizing that it is a lot easier to take a day off and stay at home with the kids when they got the chicken pox, or everybody have work home from Friday once a week and save on gas and commuting. Or of course, just for business continuity purposes, sometimes you just have to work from home for an extended period of time.
You just said take a day off and work from home. Sorry.
Thank you. No, you're right. Well, to me, it feels like it, because I have about an hour and a half commute, and so I'm picking up 3 hours of my day by doing that. So it actually, it does feel like a day off in a way. So anyhow, what's the first step? You're probably thinking, well, I'm not going to make a decision about upgrading to BC without actually seeing it and determining if it's good for my business. We'd be happy to sit down with you and do a full assessment for free. Normally, we do have a paid analysis, but we could give you a full 4-hour assessment. Just respond in the chat window and let us know if you want to do it. An assessment, the difference between an assessment and a demo. And a demo will show you the software, and an assessment will actually go down a checklist of all of your business functions, find out what it is you do, make sure it's a good fit, and we'll use that as the basis for giving you a migration estimate. And then we do have, if you please fill out the survey when you get that, but also feel free now to message any questions that you have for us in the chat window, or if you want somebody to follow up with you directly, let us know in the chat window, and we'll take care of that for you.
George, did you want me to read off some of the questions now?
Yeah, yep, let's do it.
Okay, so let's see. We got a couple questions in here. This person is currently on GP 2015 and they're planning to upgrade later this summer. Does Business Central support multi-currency, euros? Does it support multi-currency and multi-language?
The answer is yes, multi-currency, multi-company, and multi-language, what we call localization. So not just the language that's used on the labels of the fields, but even like how they format currency and different numbers and things like that. So the short answer is yes, all of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll speak to that too, because with the currency in GP, it's a little difficult to get the daily valuations, and Business Central has an automated way that you can bring in daily, or actually even more than just daily, those transactional information.
And then also a second part to that question, does it provide consolidation capabilities for financial reporting purposes?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is actually a true consolidation. So you create a consolidation company, you define which are the children, what % of ownership you have over those children, and you map your charts of accounts. You can even map your dimension values, and it will consolidate into that parent company, and then you can run reports off that company. So some systems have a report-based consolidation where there's not actually a set of books that have the combined transactions. It's just kind of combining them within a report. This is a true consolidation. And you can do multi-level. If you have, say, 3 companies in one division, 3 in another, you can consolidate the 3 in each of those into 2 parents, and then consolidate the parents up to the corporate level.
Great. Okay, this person asked, they are on GP 2015 and GP 2016, so that might be a couple different organizations.
Okay.
And they have a ton of customizations in GP, like Extender, DocLink, Liaison Messenger, Avalara, SalesPad. I mean, they have a whole bunch of stuff. When they upgrade, as well as moving to Business Central, how does that affect all those customizations?
Yeah, great question. So let's start with the upgrade. Assuming that all of those extensions, and I recognize many of them, your SalesPad, Avalara, all of those common ones are pretty much supported for every version rolling forward. We may need to reach out to those vendors and get the more recent versions of their software. But generally speaking, the upgrade should upgrade. They're designed to upgrade. As far as migrating to BC, the common ones such as Avalara, that's also available as an extension in Business Central. There is no sales pad, but we generally put in CRM as the functional equivalent for that, and we can configure it to behave like sales pad. So if you have extension, say customizations that you developed using Extender, those would not come over to Business Central in a migration. We would have to evaluate what it was you did, and then we would have to say, well, is there a native function in Business Central that already does that out of the box? If not, is it available as an extension from an existing extension out of the App Store? Or finally, is it mission critical? And if so, is it? We find that a lot of modifications that people made are actually fit better in the CRM system. So we would look and say, is it appropriate to deploy that in CRM? And if the answer is kind of no, 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 until we get to there, then we are able to customize Business Central. We just tend to kind of follow that logic of that I just described before we start customizing the core ERP system. And as long as you're using the supported method of developing what they call AL extensions, AL is just the tool set that we use for extending Business Central. If you use AL, then those are designed to survive future upgrades to Business Central. Business Central does come out with releases twice a year, a major release once a year, and kind of an interim release in the spring. And and because you're in the cloud, you'll basically, I'll say, be forced to stay current. They will have a window where they have a pre-release available where you can install it into one of your up to three sandboxes, do your testing, and then you have something like 6 more months to get through all your testing before you have to upgrade. But most people are just able to drop it into their sandbox, play with it, it works, and then they just do their upgrade right away as soon as it's available.
Wonderful. 2 more questions, George and Cecily. Number one, you mentioned the time frame moving from one GP upgrade to the next takes about a couple hours or so, upgrading from each version. When you get to the top version of GP and decide to upgrade to Business Central, what's a rough timeline that it takes to get an implementation done of Business Central?
Yeah, it's a great question, and Cecily, feel free to chime in. But first, I'm going to qualify it and say it really depends on the complexity of your business. I say we get most of the GL, AP, AR, core accounting functionality type ones done in 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 if it's a really big company with lots of different, big volume of customers and variety of transactions. If you're doing manufacturing, or what we call assembly, which is kind of light manufacturing, that adds anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 more months. The other factors that might affect the time would be, are you multi-company and how many companies do you have? Our biggest challenge in doing a migration is not moving the data. We move your data in a day or 2, even for big deployments. It's actually training you on the new processes, the new software, just getting around and how to do things. And that's largely on the customers. We can deliver that training far faster than most companies can absorb the training and then do all their testing. So George, 3 to 9 months.
Perfect. That was all the question I had. Maybe one of the other things too, maybe talk a little bit about how, as a partner, JourneyTEAM won the Dynamics or the Business Central Partner of the Year. Maybe talk to that a little bit about our experience, because we do have some deep relationships with Microsoft, and boy, do they come to us a lot for these upgrades and migrations.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I'll take any advantage or opportunity to pat myself on the back and the whole ERP team. And I'd say that the things that we did to earn that award actually applied to the GP practice as well, because a lot of what we did is we decided that we wanted to make our delivery process very repeatable, very scalable, so that every customer got the same quality experience. So it came about because we implemented a methodology and really stuck with it, and we refine it on every single project. So we scope our projects out in a lot of detail. We work in 2-week cycles where we set up the tasks that we're going to do over that 2-week cycle. we go out and we execute, then we come back at the end, we show our work, we plan out the next cycle, and then we roll forward in those 2-week cycles, and we really track the budget and the timely delivery. And we tried to make it so that our methodology encompasses every single feature in the system in excruciating detail. And then when we sit down with somebody, we actually are, instead of building up their estimate, we're actually shaving it back. We're starting with a complete implementation, and we're stripping out everything that doesn't apply. So nothing ever gets missed. And then at the end of each 2-week cycle, we do a retrospective where we look back and say, all right, what did we do wrong? What do we need to do to improve our process? And then at the end of each project, we do the same thing kind of on a bigger picture, and even say, you know, what did George and the pre-sales team do wrong when they scoped this out? What did they miss? What questions could we have asked to not do that again? And by doing that iteratively, we developed a process that has given Microsoft a lot of confidence in our ability to deliver.
Great. George, that's all we have. We've answered a bunch of questions. It seems like we've had a lot of people in the chat ask for an assessment. They will be getting a survey after this event. Maybe put some details about what current version you're on, whether it's GP or a different ERP system, and then we'll make sure that Michael Kidder and others get in touch with you about those assessments. But those are all the questions that I have at this point, George.
Well, very good. I'm like I said earlier, I'm really grateful for everybody that attended. We know that that everybody's busy and things are kind of crazy right now, but we're doing great here. We're here to help you, and feel free to reach out for anything that you need. Thank you.